It's Time Warner Cable's local edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Paul Koretz is joining us today. He is a member of the Los Angeles City Council. And so I want to speak with you about an issue that has received a lot of ink, and it's the question of fracking, an attempt to extract oil from the ground through the injection of water. We've been fracking in California for decades, but the issue has really come to the fore most recently. Talk to us about your concerns in connection with fracking.
Well, I'm concerned that while I don't think a lot of it's going on in Los Angeles now, that as we exhaust our wells, oil companies will start to request the ability to frack in Los Angeles. I think it's dangerous on a whole host of fronts, especially across the country. We're seeing earthquakes in places that have never had earthquakes before, where there's a clear connection to fracking. We're in a horrible drought, and it can take millions of gallons of water that can never be used again.
Do we know, though, definitively that it's the fracking that's causing these earthquakes in these remote places? There's no doubt. I mean, studies have indicated they've seen a 20-time spike of small earthquakes in places that didn't have earthquakes. But it does seem to be that there's not uniformity and unanimity, I should say, in terms of how and why it's being caused.
Well, experts on earthquakes across the country that are not employed by oil companies seem to have a pretty unanimous view that there has to be a connection.
And speaking of oil, could one not argue that if we could get to this oil, it would be to our benefit, because then we could decrease our reliance on foreign oil? I mean, from what the Monterey Shale, I guess it's called, which is in the center of California, they say it's like Saudi Arabia times 10.
Well, there's every good reason to go in the opposite direction. Because of climate change, we need to dramatically change our approach as a country and as a world, or in just a few decades, the planet may not be habitable. So this is the right time to reduce our reliance on foreign oil by using less oil, and by going to alternative sources like wind and solar, for our energy, electricity, and a hydrogen fuel cell for our cars.
I want to ask, we know that the state has passed some rules and regulations with regard to fracking. Senator Fran Pavley, whom you know, was involved in that. So what I want to get a sense of is, how and why does Los Angeles as a city get involved in this issue? It seems more like a state or national issue. Where does a municipality get involved?
Well, it would be better if strong fracking legislation had passed at the state level, but the power of the oil companies is just too strong. I don't know if it'll ever happen. We were fortunate that Fran Pavley was even able to get a relatively mild fracking bill through. So I think if we're going to protect Los Angeles and its water supply and provide some safety from earthquakes, we have to strike out on our own and take this position.
And so can a city ban fracking? Is that within its purview?
I believe that it can. I'm sure oil companies will say otherwise, and ultimately that will be decided in court.
So where are we on this issue today as it relates to the city of Los Angeles?
Well, Mike Bonin and I authored legislation asking the city attorney to draft an ordinance to put a moratorium on fracking until we can determine that it's safe, which I think is somewhat unlikely.
Right.
What we just got back was a report about that rather than an ordinance. So we were kind of surprised.
Okay.
The report outlines what other places have done, what the pitfalls might be.
But you plan to move forward with an ordinance to ban fracking. That's the goal.
Yes, we're going to go. We have just written a letter to the city attorney saying, this is
Take two.
Nice information from the planning department, but let's have an ordinance.
His name is Paul Koretz. My name is Brad Pomerance. It's Time Warner Cable's local edition.